Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, or whenever you happen to be listening to this, welcome to the Film Realist Podcast, the film and TV podcast from a complete nobody that is hopefully for somebody. My name is Kyle Naranjo. Welcome to episode 119, a special bonus episode. As you're thinking, this is Wednesday morning, Kyle. Why is there an episode? Well, you have to make special occasions feel like special occasions. And with the CW airing the last DC TV episode of all time yesterday or 2 days ago when you're listening to this, I thought I didn't really want to wait till Monday. There's going to be a bunch of other things to talk about. I know my guest today has already just seen all of the thing that I'm going to be talking about on Monday, but we're going to save that all for next week. I am joined by Andy Behbakht of all the CW coverage from Screen Rant. And you do too many things, Andy, to list them all out. So there's also the Multiverse of Color. And I looked this up and now I've forgotten. You have showrunners. What's the second word?
The showrunner whisperer.
Whisperer. I wanted to say insight and I knew that was wrong. So Andy, thank you. This is your first time on the show. We've been talking back and forth.
Yeah.
And Superman and Lois marks the end of the Arrowverse, and kind of history as we know it will never be the same on our televisions.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with Smallville, airing on the CW, and that's kind of really, that's what we all know. Exactly. There you go. Yeah, I have my in my background, I have the original DVD collection box, and so I listen. I grew up with that show, and that show is what made me want to pursue journalism to begin with, and then, of course, little did I know that I would be continuing my time with the CW for as long as I did. So yeah, today, this week is it's extremely bittersweet because this is like a huge part of my childhood coming to an, because also, like, throughout, because let me think. Arrow began in 2012, so I would have been 19. So yeah, this is literally 12 years of my life that I spent.
Yeah, it's funny. I had some reflective moments when Arrow debuted. And I guess we'll get into Superman and Lois very shortly, but I remember Arrow premiering that October of 2012, and I had just started dating my wife in January of that year. And then when Arrow came to an end when did Arrow end? Come on, Andy, off the top of your head, when did Arrow end?
2020, because I think it was right before the pandemic.
That's right. So yeah, in January 28th of 2020. So that coming to an end, my second kid was on the way. So in that span of 8 years, like how much my life had shifted. And series finales in general, I typically don't react very well, regardless of the quality of the show. I'm always emotional that they come to an end. And getting into Superman and Lois.
I told you before, Luther, you will never hurt another person.
What's really interesting, particularly for me, is my experience with this show. Of course, I watched all of the Arrowverse. Now, you can't see it behind me, but they're on a nice little shelf all by themselves. All the Arrow stuff or Arrowverse stuff that I own physically. Some is digitally as well. There's only so much space. And I loved, because I haven't actually had an opportunity yet to discuss Superman and Lois on the podcast in general. And that was partially because I watched the first season with my wife, and the way I kind of pitched it to her, from what the marketing was yes, Arrowverse, but also kind of blending in some of the This Is Us elements, and not the soap opera-ness that the CW is still known for, but really feeling genuine in its portrayal of those characters. And watching season 2, getting to, oh, guess what? We're on a new Earth again, and being so devastated because of all the work Crisis had done to combine everything. And then I went, no, I'm not invested. And that was just me being a mad fanboy. And I'm completely aware of that. And you and I had a conversation probably a couple months ago now, because we knew this was coming to an end. All the announcements were out that this was ending. And you're like, I'm obviously, you know what you said, but you should really watch it. I think you'll really enjoy it. And I have to say, you wouldn't have heard me say this because it was on a completely different show, but I was in the midst of season 3. I had rewatched a little bit of 2, and I was almost done 3 when I was on this other show. And one of the listener pieces of mail sent in was, who is your favorite Batman and Superman? Always a completely uncontroversial subject. Nobody
Yeah.
cares what your opinions are at all, right? No one cares.
No
Not at all.
drama, no drama at all.
None at all. And my answer for Batman was Robert Pattinson. I absolutely adore the Batman. And I sat with the Superman answer for quite a bit. I remembered seeing the Christopher Reeve movies. And then, of course, Henry Cavill had his run. I'm going to completely ignore Dean Cain because that's what the internet should do at this point. And then grew up with Smallville. And my opinion on Smallville is Tom Welling never played Superman. He played Clark Kent. That was the point of the show, right? He's Superman at the very end. We can argue about the other. I mean, I don't want to argue with you. You're my guest. But
We can absolutely we don't have to argue, we can debate. We can
we,
debate,
we
of
can
course,
debate.
you know,
We
because
can have an
'cause I
invested conversation
yeah.
and getting to all the different versions. But I'm shocked that I came to this conclusion through the question asked of me, which was, who's your favorite live action Superman? And I sat with it, and my opinion that I said a couple weeks ago even holds even more true now, which what Superman and Lois offered Superman fans was such a unique and succinct vision of what this character's, I had to look, it's 86-year history, and distilling that into a performance that feels like it captures all the different touchstones of the Supermen we've seen before. And I remember, I'm sure you were there as well, when he was introduced in season 2 of Supergirl, being like, oh no, this is a little too of the nerd for me. But Tyler Hoechlin's Superman feels the most true to the variety of perspectives this character has had, which is insane to me. But I mean, the CW has defined a bunch of these characters. And let's get into season 4 more specifically, which is one, it is rare that a CW show gets to tell its final season without just getting axed.
Yeah.
So having that opportunity, and for one, I give everyone a lot of credit because what the focus of the show has been the Kent family and Superman and Lois. This isn't Superman and his wife is sometimes there. It is a two-hander of a show, and the balance between, I mean, my brain wants to call her Bitsy because that was her name in a lot of other things for so long, but Elizabeth Tulloch and Tyler Hoechlin. I tweeted this out. I don't know if you saw this, but she was asking people on X, Twitter, whatever, what your opinion of the show's finale was. And what I said to her was, Christopher Reeve made people believe a man could fly. That's what those movies are known for. It was a part of the marketing. It's on all the posters. But what I took from Superman and Lois and their relationship and the dynamic they portrayed on screen was that Tyler Hoechlin and Elizabeth Tulloch gave us something to believe in, which I think is the most succinct way to describe what this show manages to do with so many different hurdles. And shockingly, it shouldn't be shocking at this point, and it's a very long-winded sentence, and then it's not just going to be me talking and you nodding your head, which I appreciate.
No,
but
I like what you have to say, so, you know, this is like, yeah, this is keep going for it.
but finales are really difficult, and I don't want to spend the whole
Yeah.
conversation talking about the finale. And of course, I know we're going to discuss it, but in how this show captures what it knows its focus was, being that 4-pack of Kents and their impact in, pun intended, Smallville, I'm blown away by what this show was able to do with a character we know so well. This wasn't The Flash, Green Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, Batwoman, even to some degree, Black Lightning, even more so, capturing so much history, but distilling it into a succinct vision to a show that, now that I actually have completed it, it's probably going to be the first CW show I revisit when I get a chance. It's rare. There's so much stuff to cover, but at some point I probably will. And I can't wait to revisit it again, even though I still have things I want to talk about, but I think I can kind of save my criticisms for our Arrowverse stuff we'll talk about. So I know you did a review, and I haven't had a chance to watch it yet because obviously for me, or the finale ended yesterday. So season 4 as a whole, what did you think? And then what is the legacy of Superman and Lois for you?
It's a great question. For me, because I had what's funny for me because I saw like the screener version of the finale, so a lot of the effects were not finished yet. So there was a lot of things where I'm like, what am I what am I what am I looking at? Like it's like I wish I mean there's some funny shots where like for example like the one of the final shots in the finale, which when it's the Kent boys fighting with Superman and John Henry Irons and Natalie as Steel and Starlight. It's those are just CGI models in my version. So I'm like, Yay, woo, it's great. I wonder what's gonna look like on Monday." And then I saw it on Monday, and I'm like, "Oof, that looks so sick." So for me, like I've been able to digest the finale for like a little bit longer because again, and when I say that it traumatized me, because again, people are gonna be like, it's just a TV show, but like, for me, there's a core element of this episode that I'm like, I don't know how I sit with it. But for me, season 4, I mean, I have to give such props to that entire creative team and people behind and in front of the camera of working with these insane circumstances because for people who may not know, in order for season 4 to happen, they had to go through a couple of major changes. Was one, we went from 15 episodes to 10 episodes, which is probably the shortest an Arrow show has got in a season, probably since Arrow season 8. And they also had to get rid of 7 cast members and to mold them to like basically like special guest stars who appear like in like 2 or 3 episodes throughout the season. And in order for the VFX to look as good as it did, they had they had to be very selective how much action we actually got to see throughout season 4, and which is why, like, I saw someone online being like, "I don't." They were kind of like, "I don't mind this," but like I've noticed that there's more talking scenes this season than there is action. Which again, like, there wasn't a criticism, but he just said, like, "I'm noticing it." So you know, and again, the CW being what it is, I mean, because okay, Kyle, you were alluding to it before that with Hurdles, like, this is a show that the CW would treat so weirdly when it came to its airing even, like, throughout the season, they would be like they would air a couple episodes, and then would take a one-month break, then come back for 2 episodes, and then go away again, and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it's really, really annoying, like, why they did this so much specifically with this show, and but yeah, but season 4, I mean, for me, like, if someone puts a gun to my head and says, "Name a bad episode," I'm like, "I can't," because it seemed like they really knew what they wanted to do with this final season, and it didn't feel like there were last minute changes of like, let's need to cut this or do that. Like, you feel that they knew they had a strategy and they ran with it and they stuck to it, which because again, with the CW, like we don't normally get the chance to say goodbye to the show on our term. It is usually like there might be a huge cliffhanger, then CW is like, "LOL, no YOLO for you, you're done." And I'm glad Super Lois didn't have to go through all of that because if 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 the final shot we had seen of Superman Lois on the CW, if the final shot had been Superman and Doomsday getting ready to fight, and then the show didn't come back, I would have been pissed because that is not an okay way for the show to end and leave us with a cliffhanger that big. So yeah, so I'm glad that season 4 like actually got to end and that there are no unanswered questions left.
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought they were really economical with how we use the supporting cast. The focus, particularly in the beginning, of course, being on Kyle and oh my goodness, who
Lana?
owns not Lana, uh, his new baby mama.
Oh, Chrissy.
Chrissy. Yeah. And that developed that relationship. And it's like, okay, they're going to go have a baby. Pivot. And then Lana and John Henry Irons and all that stuff. And I remember being nervous when we started hearing rumblings that there was going to be a reduction in the cast. But the way they use them throughout the story, I never felt like, and you can feel this on a lot of TV shows. I'm going to use this is not a criticism, but Umbrella Academy season 4 as another season ending a show you can start to be like, oh, we have no supporting cast anymore. We just have our leads and whoever the new antagonists are. But the way that they're able to move the story around, specifically with Sam Lane and how they're able to use him to bring Superman back, that's always something that's always really interesting. And something I applaud this show for doing, which was doing the death of Superman, for one, making it feel earned. And I'm not talking about the Snyderverse stuff. That's not what we're here to do. But That's a story that has been told multiple times. There's been a Superman Doomsday animated movie. They did The Death and Return of Superman as two animated movies. Of course, they did it for a second in the Snyderverse, and we're doing it now here and capturing a different way for that. And what I think is going to go really under discussed in this show is specifically going to be Michael Kudlitz's portrayal of Lex Luthor. We have had a lot. Every Superman has a version of his, but the menace to which he is able to capture from this version of Lex Luthor, it's fantastic. And I've liked most of the Lex Luthors because, similar to our main heroes and some major DC villains, there's usually some way to enter that character and portray them in a new and unique way. Sometimes you're somebody who gets to be the maniacal menace. Sometimes you are almost suffering with substantial amounts of trauma, like our versions in film, or you get a lot of people talk about Michael Rosenbaum's portrayal, of course. He did it for 7 years and one cameo at the end of Smallville. And that's probably the one that most people are aware of outside of I mean, Superman the movie came out in 1979. So it was a long time ago. But what he brought to that character, and as somebody who grew up in the 90s, I so appreciated that they gave us like the red hair and the beard
Yeah.
because that's a version of the character we just don't get. And the evolution and degradation of his psyche as things are continually going wrong with his quote unquote plan, I thought was great. And for one, introducing, I mean, they teased us that Lex Luthor was John Henry Irons in the very beginning. And I remember being like, no, but we had a Lex. Oh no, right. We're doing a different thing. And I commend the writers of this show so much because pocketing him for the finale really does feel like this is Clark's Superman's ultimate challenge, right? He's facing the thing that kills him, and in some versions of the story, the guy responsible for that. And it doesn't feel like on a I mean, there are shots that my brain loved, but also was like, as a Doctor Who fan, went, oh, like we're being really economical with this, particularly in the finale when their Doomsday and Superman are flying into a building. I went, oh no, we didn't have a real human for this long shot where they fly into the building. But I think what you brought up was, it's not a criticism. It's actually really impressive that with most of this season being conversations, those conversations have to be really good. And I commend the show also because I know you've interviewed him and I'm sure he's lovely. Man, was Jordan really getting on my nerves, particularly through the back half of 3 and 4.
Don't
I
attack
know people love him.
don't yeah, he's that's because that's who I was when I was growing up. So like I'm protective of him.
I completely respect it. It is an aspect of the CW that, love it or hate it, will always be a part of the teen angst, the soap opera-ness. And that's not to say it's a criticism, but I was really grateful, particularly with its use of that relation. Like the twin idea with the two of them, I really, really like, because in so many versions, Jonathan Kent's always a baby. Like in more recent comics, he's become Superboy, and they're obviously exploring a lot of really great stuff with him. I've got a couple of the issues on my shelf, but it's a dynamic that is so specific with Clark and Lois being parents. It's not something we really get to see. And for one, they both would have had to have these kids at like 22. We don't actually address how old our actors are because they're all in their like late to early or mid 30s, but that's neither here nor there because the show obviously addresses that later. And these relationships have to work, particularly in this season, as you said, or this season falls apart because there's a lot less of the action stuff. It's funny because there are so many movies and blockbusters that you watch and you go, oh, they ran out of things to say, or okay, we talked for a little bit, we've got to entertain the audience with an actiony thing. And with so little of that and the story working, I was really impressed.
Yeah, I because the word filler gets used a lot on particularly with some of these shows, and because especially because when we have Superman Lois establishing itself that it is, you know I know people like to say, it's not part of the Arrowverse. I'm like, y'all, they're using the same actors. Like, calm the frack down. So it is a
They've had a multiverse. Within
exactly.
the multiverse of the Arrowverse.
See, Kyle, I understand that. Why can't some of y'all out there not? Like, it's just because, like, I still have people go, like, I've been yelled at by people online when I even write articles and screenwrite and I referencing that this is the last Arrowverse show. They're like, it's not. It was the Flash. I'm like, but Arrowverse was rooted in multiverse. Like, like what? Like, did y'all not see the first 4 seasons of Supergirl?
Black
How was that part?
Lightning.
Black Lightning, exactly. So it's like again, like it's I understand that some people are just not educated. I understand it's not, they don't like they don't want to embrace the truth. I understand that, but couldn't be me though. So, for me, like we don't have. And that, we don't have other characters we can rely on or other story we can rely on this earth because they've established that in this universe, Superman is the only superhero that exists. There is, metahuman is not really a common thing here yet. And there's definitely not a Justice League. There's definitely not all someone like Barry Allen just running around. If anything, I'm sure Barry Allen might just be a human in this world. And so yeah, so anytime they had, talkative scenes, I didn't feel like, ugh, this is like, can we fast forward? Like, even like, you know, I've made it clear I'm not a big Kyle fan, and that's no offense to Eric Valdez's performance. Like that's the thing because Eric is such a nice guy in real life from what I've seen, but his character is something just so insufferable. But like even when they were having their moments this season, I'm like, you know what? Like I like seeing the growth in Kyle. I like seeing that Chrissy's now gonna, she's building a life for herself outside the Gazette, and like so it didn't feel like, oh, where's the fast forwarding button? Like, because, I that's not I never wanted to feel anything like that during the final season, so or even when, like, when Sarah was back for a few episodes and she was kinda, like, conflicted with her identity and what she wanted to do, because again, that's the thing, you know, as Kyle was mentioning, there is a lot of teen angst, there is a lot of soap opera-ness to some of these shows, but this is a young woman trying to figure out, like, do I belong in Smallville or where do I belong? Now also, it also doesn't help that Lex Luthor is a maniac and trying to go after everyone because this is the pettiest Lex Luthor I have ever seen, and I love like Michael Cutlass is a beast with his performance, and I love that. But like he was really like going after everyone. That I'm like, yeah, Sarah, you need to get the hell out of here, because he doesn't care if you're a kid or not. He's like, if Superman and Lois Lane loves you, then I'm going after you. Like, thank God that they didn't have any pets back then in the video because he would have gone. Thank God Krypto wasn't there because he would have gone after. Like he would have gone after anyone. That's how angry he was. So yeah, I love that when we had non-action scenes that it mattered. It didn't feel like, "Oh my god, can we get to commercial break now?" or anything like that. It felt like, "Okay, this is nice." Some of them are getting send-offs, and some of them are, we know we're gonna see them later in the season, like John Henry Irons. So, yeah, I applaud the writers for, they had a game plan and they stuck to it.
I think well, as for one, I'm gonna clip this because I think it was funny. But when you're just saying I'm not a fan of Kyle, and I wanted to act surprised. So what? As a Kyle speaking for other Kyles, just give us time. We'll get there. But that's a character I think's a really interesting one, particularly through the run of the show, because in a less well-written show, Kyle Cushing would have just been the angry guy who Lana settled for. And that would have been the angst he would have had the whole time. But they gave him dimension. For one, obviously, addiction is a real thing. His happened to be with alcohol, and how that relationship evolves into a productive co parenting scenario to where he's invited to Lana's next wedding. Like, I think we all know situations where that is not the norm. So the fact that that's the case really shows like that those characters, for one, put their kids above anything else. And we see them react to all sorts of different things, right? With Sarah having the near death experience and the reveal. And I think that's a good thing to talk about now that I'm thinking about it, which is the identity crisis that Clark has clearly had his whole life, and the way that we're able to explore that specifically, to me, kind of speaks to something that hasn't really been addressed in all sorts of stuff. And because this Clark, when we meet him, was doing the, I wouldn't say bumbling, but the less confident Clark Kent than we've seen in the past. I don't think he goes as far as Christopher Reeve, but then obviously Superman is Superman.
Mild mannered.
Yeah. But like, one thing is Tyler Hoechlin's not hiding the shape he's in. Like when he's wearing clothes, you're like, that dude's fit, right? He's not.
Yeah.
So, right, maybe he's good in the gym, but he's not athletically inclined. They're different things. I can lift heavy stuff. I'm not talking about me specifically. But that character and everyone knowing him as Clark and the relationships he has, Clark is just Clark to everybody. And it's the reveal of his character, of who he is, the confidence he bestows when he is Superman, and how that is laid out. I know you saw it. I know I saw it, which was the clip of him revealing himself to the diner at the, I believe it was episode 7, and what that means moving forward. Now, this is a criticism, which is because of budget, I don't think they could show how crazy that would actually be when the guy is now known to everyone. I was a little disappointed in the interview for the Daily Planet. He's just sitting in plaid. Like, no, dude, suit up. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? But I get it. And I think the way that Tyler Hoechlin specifically plays that struggle, even with the glasses, it being such a small moment in episode 7, where it's in such habit. And I think it does fit with other versions of the character we've seen, which is that fear that his parents have clearly bestowed on him, unintentionally or not, of, if you are known, you will be taken away from your loved ones. Like, it comes as a father, that comes from a place of wanting to protect your children for as long as you can, which he's clearly continued with his relationship specifically with Jordan, but how that dynamic is also explored with his relationship with Jonathan, that I was grateful got powers. I think it was a little unfair, and I get why they did what they did. But here's another thing that I don't want to get into the behind the scenes that you and I may have discussed with this, but the actor who plays Jordan from 3 into 4,
You mean Jonathan?
sorry, Jonathan,
Yeah.
thank you. 2 J names, but the actor, what's his name? I don't have them all. Michael Bishop, who comes
Yeah.
in as new Jonathan. What I liked specifically from him into 3 and 4 is the way that he interacts with other people and his delivery of dialogue. Jonathan becomes much more likable. Like, he's still that sports athletic guy, but I found his relationships felt a lot less one-sided.
Yeah.
And then obviously, right, he comes to blows with Jordan over thinking you're this new hotness because dad's dead. And I liked the consequences of his meta crisis coming from a really emotional place, right? Losing a parent, the worst thing you could possibly imagine. And in a lot of other shows that I'm sure you and I have both watched, that would come off as incredibly cheesy. But it's such an earnest, earned moment for this character who has clearly struggled with this. We saw in season 2 him taking, I want to just call it yellow kryptonite, but they had another name for it in this show.
X Kryptonite?
X kryptonite, right? I mean, they're doing the Smallville thing. You got to continue that. People get powers when they get kryptonite.
Hey, listen. I take it as a badge of honor that the show did that as well.
It's true. And I think it's what's going to be the most interesting is the conclusion to this, which is we get the fight. I was shocked by its ending, just Doomsday getting beat in the head by John Henry Irons' hammer, which I thought was it was brains over brawn to some degree. And then I don't know about you, but I found it slightly humorous that we kind of get a How I Met Your Mother ending, but I'm sure people are going to accept much more because we get a smash cut of their future.
Yeah, I mean, How Much Your Mother, I mean, when I saw that series finale, I was like, burn the show to the ground. Like, I'm like, because I had fallen in love so much with Kristen Milioti in that point in the season that I'm like, what do you mean she's dying? What do you mean she is sick? I'm like, F off. I don't want this. I don't want this at all. So, when we watched the Penguin, like, and we got to the finale, I was like, am I about to go through How Much You Matter again, but this time with Sophia? So, like, I'm so
Sophia deserved it though, Andy. Come on. Like, Tracy obviously did not, but Sophia
I mean, I
did.
just, I love a good villainess, and I think Sophia is very much a victim of her own evil, and her own family in other ways. So that's why I'm like, no, Matt Reeves and Lauren LaFranc, you two do not get to take her away from me because I want to see her more in other Batman universe projects. Listen, at this point, like, she and Catwoman are gonna connect. Let's set up the Gotham City Sirens because DCU could clearly not come to that point. So I will take it. But in terms with this show, I I think I will say this. I wish that episode 9 had kind of been the Doomsday versus Superman and Superman versus Lex fight, and I wish that the finale had just been an hour of, "Let's spend more time with them in the future. Let's go through what their lives would look like." Because I do feel that, again, I don't have a lot of criticism about, I mean, not about the final season, but also the series finale itself, but that was one of the point where I'm like, this should have aired as a 2-hour event, and 9 should have been just, "Let's just have this be the action hour," then 10, we spend some time in the future of, seeing the boys being Superboys, for example, and seeing, because there's, I guess we'll get to it eventually, but yeah, like, what happens to Lois and then eventually Clark, I'm kind of like, I don't, I don't know about this, but it's listen, like, like I will say this, like, out of all the seriousness we've had with the Arrowverse, which again, like, not all, because I was talking to someone else about it yesterday, that only a few of these shows have been able to have a proper series finale. So the other shows, they got canceled. Like Legends Tomorrow, Batwoman, even to an extent Black Lightning was canceled. They just found it in the middle of the season that they had canceled, and they still had a finale that worked, but Naomi was canceled, Gotham Knights was canceled, and so, it's only like we've only had Arrow, Supergirl, The Flash, and Superman and Lois that got proper finales. So the fact that we even got a series finale for a show this big is, you know, I can't bite the hand too much that's feeding me. But yeah, like if I would have changed a few things, I would have made 9 and 10 a 2-hour event, and 9 would have been purely like Superman versus Doomsday, and then Lex versus Superman, which, again, they were phenomenal battles in this finale. But because those final 20 minutes, there's a lot of information to digest and accept.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. If this show wasn't cut down from or season by episode length, I
Mhm,
think we probably would have had like at least an hour and a half. My brain is just going to how long they actually are, of like a big fight, right? Like the first 45 is all Doomsday, and then his sons team up with him, and then Clark's like, "No, it's me versus Lex," and honestly, I feel like they probably still would have done what they wound up doing, and I love that shot of him just punching him in the suit falling off. I mean,
oh, that was sick.
looking at the science of Superman, he probably would have shattered Lex into a million. He would have just been a bag of soup at that point. But again, what I like so much about that is this Lex is clearly the tactician that we are used to from so many different versions, but is so overwhelmed with the fact that he's a petty SOB that he stops to see what's happening around him, which I appreciate. And the flash forwards, what I like most about that is one, it sticks with I mean, people are probably going to laugh at this, but the realism, like it is not rare, but the percentages of somebody who's had cancer getting it again, that's not typically abnormal. And that storyline, I really appreciate. I know it's been criticized to some degree by others, but what I like most about what that does for Clark and Lois's relationship is really put forward the dynamic of who Clark is as a person, right? He's the man of steel, but on depending on this, I believe they do this for this one, but the House of L symbol means hope. And
Mhm.
him being the eternal optimist and that really being something. I mean, I've been with my wife to if in total for 13 years now, like that dynamic of those conversations are real things and addressing that where it's like you need to picture a world in which I don't make it, and I love that aspect of it. And with him getting Sam's heart and knowing that there's some finality now to him being super, and we get to see that as opposed to, I mean, I'm just going to say it, like, I hated the Flash ending because it's not an ending. It's like, and there was more. It's like, but you don't tell us what the more is, right? Like Arrow to some, I mean, they killed off Stephen Amell, and I don't want to talk about Felicity at all because I think that might be one of my least favorite relationships in comic TV history. But exploring that, giving us our Grimm cameo, which I thought was really fun. And then, as you
I was
mentioned, we
confused.
actually get a.
I was confused because not to interrupt you, but like I was confused. I'm like, her husband is playing her own son. I'm like, this is like I couldn't see the correlation again. I mean, listen, that dude is a good actor, and he's like, and also he directed a phenomenal episode of Superman Lois this year. But I was kind of like, isn't this a little weird that he's playing your son? You know, like so like but again, I get it. They wanted to do a flash forward. They wanted to see the boys grown up. Although a part of me was kind of laughing a little bit because I'm like, wait a minute, because these boys were like 16, 17 years old when we were watching them like throughout the present time. You don't grow that much after your teens. So I'm like, they like, cause suddenly they were like, tall and like they were bulky as hell, and I'm kind of like,
Their
oh.
Kryptonian genes really kicked in their early 20s. Right? Obviously that's what happened, right?
Crypto, your puberty.
Yeah. Hey, man. Okay, so here's a fun story about me. I don't think I've said this on the podcast yet. I entered high school at 4'11. Okay? And then between grades 10 and 11, so like I was, I guess, 14. I don't know. Yeah, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, whatever. So, and then between grades 10 and 11, so between 15 and 16, I grew 5 inches. And then between 16 and 17, I grew another 5 inches. So I left just under 6 feet. So like
Damn.
a foot in the span of 2 years. So like, who knows? I don't know, maybe. And to be fair, Jonathan got his powers late. So who knows? But what I like about that is we've had endings with Superman. I believe Superman or Clark and Lois, the Superman story. Oh, I guess I'm talking about it. I don't know what that finale is. I have no interest in learning about that one is, but my hesitation with where we were going was obviously in Crisis. We continued, and in my mind, it is the Tom Welling from Smallville. It does make sense that he would give up his powers, at least in my mind. I know that also was debated amongst fans, and that this version, at least from what we see from this, continued to be Superman. And in a world where he was the hero, embracing the other supers around him, I really liked that. And again, the focus of the show is Superman and Lois, right? And that relationship and its meaningful connections that they've had forever, carrying themselves forward. And then knowing that his sons are going to take over, and all the people that affected his life and why he was Superman was from a place of hope and love. And that's what this version of Superman stands for. It was beautiful. And I don't think it made me cry because it just kind of overloads you with information on what's going on,
Yeah.
because it is 20 minutes. I love that Bruno Mannheim is like, "You're my chair now, Lex," which I really appreciate. And
And by chair,
finales are hard.
and by chair, he means because that is exactly what Lex is now. Like, sorry, cut here,
Yeah.
42 minutes or something for the cussing, but yeah, like he ain't no chair. He is
Yeah.
an SOB now for
Yes. Yes,
Bruno
he is.
Mannheim. I love that Chad Coleman got to come back in these final two episodes, and that they were also kept a surprise because a lot of these CW shows, especially the DC ones, because they film in Vancouver, and when they were filming outside, it
That's in
is
Canada, I believe.
I think that's in Canada too. Yeah, I think so
I
too.
think it's in
So,
Canada.
so there's a lot of easy opportunities for set photos to come out when like some of these surprises are ruined. But with this, like we never, like I had no clue that Chad was coming back in 9 and 10. So that was, it was a pleasant surprise, and that he also gets a very cool ending because I think Bruno Mannheim played the best antagonist on the show, not the best villain, because I could actually understand a lot where Bruno was coming from and what he was trying to do for his community and for his people. And would you get as a man of color myself and someone grew up in a rougher part of my town, I get it. I totally get it. And Lex Luthor is the best villain of the show, like without a doubt. But and we had Tal Rowe, who really became a reformed character. Which again, I'm bummed that Uncle Tal was not back with the finale. But I get he's in the other universe, enjoying his marriage with Lana Lang or whatever it was that they were trying to imply. And yeah,
On
so
Cube World.
the Cube World, yeah, it's
I love that so much. It's such a dumb comic book thing. Okay, so we're talking about the multiverse aspects of this. I understand, as we've discussed already, that this is a multiverse, but given so many things with the Arrowverse, it does make me sad that Melissa Benoist was never in this show,
yeah, that was that,
right?
like, when we see that final shot of them all flying in the sky, I'm like, "Kara should have been there."
She should have been. Well, for me, it was, and I understand what they were trying to do specifically with the first season, but it never sat right with me. It's like, wait, Ma Kent died, and you're telling me Kara's not going to be there? And I know it was a COVID restriction, which is why we never wound up getting the Superman Batwoman crossover we were supposed to, or Superman and Lois Batwoman crossover we were supposed to get. So, and I respect that the show kept its own continuity without doing that, but as we've said, it's Tyler Hoechlin of the Arrowverse.
Yes,
I think most like, and who's to say her pod didn't land when he was like 40, right? Like it doesn't mean it didn't happen. I mean, it now means it didn't happen, but it doesn't mean it couldn't have happened, which
exactly.
is a little.
Or maybe, what could have happened is that she I mean, this is I'm gonna make this my new headcanon because, I wanna be less sad about this finale, and I think she came to Earth after Clark's passing, and she discovered that her cousin is no longer alive, that she was too late, that because maybe she was still trapped in because in the Phantom Zone, time doesn't move. Maybe once she did get out, she gets to Earth, she realized, "My cousin is not here anymore, but I have these 2 incredible sons that he left behind. Let me be there for them." And they get to have Auntie Cara, taking care of them in some regard. That's just, how I would do it.
I love and hate that at the same time. Just because it means they didn't share the screen. She didn't get to share the screen with Tyler again. Okay. I would like, I mean, you feel free to say no, but I know this is a popular thing. So I've done it when universes or phases of things have come to an end. Okay, Andy?
Hmm?
So what I would like you to do is I have an S tier list. So it's S, A, B, C, D, F. And in my mind, at least, when you're tier listing a thing, it's not, oh, this is an S tier, therefore this is as good as The Wire or
Mhm.
whatever. Okay, because I don't think that's fair. We're grading this on its own universe or spectrum. So I have all the Arrowverse shows. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't think I'm missing one. Well, if I am, we'll come up with it later. So I would like you to rank, now that this whole thing is over, I would like you to rank the Arrowverse shows on this list.
Okay. Okay, so S tier, that's like the top, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it goes S, A, B, C, D, F.
Okay. I'm not putting anyone on F because I think that all these shows are great in their own regard, in their own strengths. Um, I would say I would probably put Flash. 'Cause, I mean, well, I will say Flash because that people know that's what people know me for. Like Legends Tomorrow,
Why
I
would
would
they
say.
know you for that, Andy? I don't know what are you talking
Well,
about? Did
I
you do
don't.
a podcast about it the whole time? I
I
don't
think
know.
I did a podcast. Yeah, no, but what he's alluding to. So one of my big career chapters was that I did the Flash podcast for 10 years, which covered the show, and that was kind of how I got my career a little bit, into journalism a little more spearheaded because that's how a lot of people from the Flash, like a lot of people from the Flash knew who I was, and they paid attention to, and that kind of gave me it helped me give a following, so I could also become like the DC. Oh, thank you, the DC TV guy to some of these people in the fandom, and So Flash has a very special place in my heart. I am fully aware that it definitely has some weaknesses. And some of them I would call them the Steel Horton, because that woman drove me insane. But yeah, I will wait with putting the Flash on my list. So I would say Little Tomorrow. I would probably put it on
Sorry.
C.
Flash goes where?
No, no, I'm waiting with the Flash. I'm waiting with the Flash.
Oh, you're waiting.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh, you're gonna tease us like that.
I'm
Okay.
building anticipation.
Okay. All right. Well done.
I'm putting Flash. I'm putting Legends of Tomorrow on C because
Okay.
I love the show. I think that season one, it did not know what it was doing at all with it, and the later season, it became kind of like the goofy time travel show, which with also with a lot of great queer representation and people of color representation, which I'm always advocating for. But I always felt like in comparison, like Little Sort got stuck in its own formula a little bit too much. Batwoman, I will put it on probably the same level because they had they had to restructure the show after Ruby Rose was no longer with the show. Depending on what you're hearing, either she was fired or she left on her own volition. But I love what Javisha Leslie did with the Ryan Wilder character and becoming a new Batwoman. She was, like 10 times better than Kate Kane. And I loved seeing it from a new perspective in the world of Gotham City. So, but that show ran for so short that I'm like, it didn't really get the chance to evolve as much as I wish it could have. And so that's those two. Then let's take Supergirl. That's probably my least favorite Arrow show. So I'm gonna put it on D because I love the first two seasons. And I listen, Melissa Benoist is a phenomenal Supergirl. There are some amazing characters in that show. Like Nicole Maines as Dreamer and Jesse Rapp as Brainiac 5, and of course Kyra Lee as Alex Danvers. She became one of the best OG characters we've ever seen. Her and Dreamer. So, but that show lost its identity by season 3 and beyond. Like I also think listen, I don't mind political storylines and so on, but I think that the show became a little too obsessed with paralleling what was going on in the real world. And the thing is like we watch these shows because we want to get away from the real world. We don't want to be reminded of people in power, because and if you follow the election this year, have fun and figure out whatever
Was there
losing.
an election?
I think
Was there?
I've
Not where I live.
yeah, who knows? Who knows? So Supergirl sat, and again, by the end of the series, the effects, like they just the effects, the storytelling just didn't work for me in the end. So that putting it on D. Um, Arrow. Okay. People who know me know that I have a love hate relationship with that show.
I think Arrow has a love-hate relationship with itself.
Yeah,
Let's be like being totally
yeah.
honest, right?
I will.
I think your description of Supergirl, I think completely fits with Arrow as well.
You know, I I can see that too. Yeah, I agree. I would say because I think that the final season was so good. I think it's like one of the best season of Arrow all time because obviously 1 and 2 are amazing. 3, I don't know what they were going on there. 4, I will never revisit season 4 because they killed my queen, Diana Laurel Lance, Black Canary. You don't do that to Katie Cassidy. You don't spit in her name and kill off her character. You just don't do that. You don't do that at all. So, but 5 was, oh my god, what a like flip on its head. Like, that was an amazing 5th season. I don't even remember what 6 and 7 were about, honestly. And 8 was, that was the first season that I bought on Blu-ray for the first time in a long time. Like I stopped after season 2, but on season 8 I was like, I'm gonna get season 8 because I love that final season. So I'm gonna put it on B, and I'm gonna put it on B.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I've revisited Arrow more than I've revisited Batwoman or Legends or Supergirl. And then Black Lightning. I'm gonna put it on A because I think that show, Salim Akil and Barbara Akil, they knew from the get go what they wanted with the show, and I think it challenged the other shows in a lot of ways because it follows a black superhero family, but also follows a black family in today's America in a lot of ways. Again, like that pilot is still one of the most powerful beginnings of a show I've ever seen of you know, they're playing low fruit and and like they're talking about police brutality and all these horrible things that black people have to go through in a lot of ways. And it's like it's again. I'm like I never thought we could get a show like that on the CW. I'm like you're getting to say this, you're getting to say that, they're going to talk about this and that. So I love Black Lightning from the get go to its very end, and that's why I am putting on A. And
So do you want to do the Flash now and then end on Superman and Lois?
sure,
You only got 2
I
left.
only got two left.
Okay. You only
Um,
got 2 left.
the Flash. Okay, so here's the thing. I hope you clip this part because I want to see if the listeners that I have from the Flash book are gonna give me like, is he BSing us right now or like is he
I think I know where you're gonna put it, but
okay?
I'm gonna.
Here's the thing: the strength of that show always relied on Grant Gustin as the Flash. Like for me, like he is, there is no, listen, I love John Bishop as Barry Allen and the Flash. He's my second favorite Flash. We're not going to talk about Ezra Miller. Like, come on. Grant is the Flash. He's not playing the Flash. He is the Flash. He is Barry Allen. And there were rough seasons of the Flash. I have not listen, like, because people think that I was, like, licking their asses all the time, which I'm no, I wasn't, like, I had to just I gave my critique of the show. You can listen on the flashbuggers.com. I also, and Candace Patton as Iris was Alan was, like, she was the beating heart of that show in so many ways. I am putting it on, like, an A minus. I'm putting on an A minus, and like I can just tell the internet is gonna be like, "Are you for real right now?" Like but it's not because of the story. Because again, like listen, season 7 was a very rough season because of the pandemic. Season 5, I never want to revisit that season ever again. And that was ironically Todd Helping's last season as a showrunner of Flash before he went to do Superman Lois. So when he got announced, I'm like, he's gonna do Superman. Like, he's gonna do Superman Lois, okay? And but he proved himself. He proved himself. Season 9, and season 9 is very uh, construed in a lot of ways. Again, I understood how you feel about the ending, but I like the series finale of the Flash. Because I'm glad we got anything like that at all with him going after all the speedsters and him kind of setting up the idea of a Max Mercury and Jesse. What's their? It's the new speedster, just quick, and Aubrey Ho. I like that they set up that. I love that we got the birth of Nora West Allen and everything. Even though it was kind of trippy that Nora then held herself later on, and I'm like, this shouldn't be possible. But yeah, but the reason I'm putting on an A minus is because Grant Gustin just his chemistry with the Candice Patton. Listen, I'm a shipper. I'm the captain of the West Island ship. If you're watching this or listening to this, you know that I fought for all you guys because that was the best ship in the whole Arrowverse. So they were the reason I stuck with the show throughout the entire run, and because they, Grant and Candace are Barry Allen and Iris West Allen to me, and so you can call me a chill if you want to. That's perfectly fine. I've been, people have been saying that for the last 3 years anyway, so I'm used to it. Um, and then I would put Superman Lois, of course, on A as well, a step above the Flash, because
Interesting.
because um because I don't think any of them really for me. Um, I don't know if any of them got to S for me at the end. Because I think, like, again, I think it's for example, some of the criticism I have against Superman Lois, I think that sometimes it felt like they were like too proud to be, consider themselves being part of the Arrowverse. That I'm like, because I felt there was always like a little bit of an elitism between Super Lois and the other shows because they got Super Lois, they got more resources, they got more priority from the network and so on. And I think it was a lazy move to just say in the end that we're not part of the same Earth. Where I'm like, it's not that complicated. You can just there's like and again, it doesn't help that that same season finale had Diggle in it. I'm like, we're not part of the Arrowverse. Here's David Ramsey for the billionth time,
Yeah.
looking exactly how he looked like on The Flash the week before, because he
Yes.
visited The Flash season 7 right before that, and then
Just no. Oh, you know what's interesting? I think I agree with a lot of what you said. So I'm gonna go through mine
Yeah, I'm excited to hear yours
in
now.
okay. So I'm just gonna go by the way they've showed up here on my Google slides, which is The Flash has still one of the best seasons of the show, period, with season one. I absolutely adore season one. Its exploration of all that stuff. The introduction. Grant Gustin is for The Flash. I think what Christopher, and this has been said by other people, like what Christopher Reeve did for Superman at the time, which is there is Grant Gustin is The Flash until somebody knocks him off that pedestal. I would argue still that his Barry was a Barry Allen or Barry Wally West fusion, but that's okay. But I loved Grant Gustin as that character. The Flash for me gets a B because there's some incredible seasons and there's some not so good seasons. My biggest criticism of the construction of the show was when seasons started getting chopped into like volumes because they couldn't write or chose not to or couldn't have season long arcs. Like they introduce a lot of really cool stuff that just doesn't get done, which was kind of annoying to me. Like I liked the introduction of not I'm going through the seasons really quickly. Who did they the blood guy? What was the blood guy's
Blood
name?
work, blood work.
I liked blood work a lot. I thought that was really interesting and compelling and its use of the colorful characters was really fun. Then Arrow's evolution amongst the first two seasons, I did really like, and then it just became Batman Light for a little bit, literally doing Ra's al Ghul. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I love the last season. I think having each episode be a retrospective on each of the seasons was really, really smart and gave me nostalgia for seasons I didn't even like, which I thought was quite comical. So I'm gonna put Arrow on C for that. Next year, I have Black Lightning. I loved Black Lightning. I think Crease Williams as that character gave it such gravitas and having somebody come in and treat all of this so seriously and it not being tongue in cheek, like, no, this is the world we live in, and all of the things you said about it. It was really great. And for it to blend into the Arrowverse and not feel as if it was like, what's going on here? Because obviously it was a CW show, but the scenes between Crease and Grant were so
Oh,
good
you
in the
mean Crest?
crossover stuff.
You mean Crest?
Crest.
I was like,
Sorry,
Creed.
Crest. Yeah.
When you said
Sorry,
Creed,
Crest.
I'm thinking, why is he talking
No,
about Cobra Kai right now?
no, I'm not. I'm not. Sorry, that's my mistake. Crest Williams was so great,
Yeah.
and I love what he did with that. So I'm gonna put that in A. Next, I have Supergirl. I agree with everything that you said. It did really lose who it was. I love Melissa Benoist. Its cast, similar to Arrow for me, got way too big, and we started focusing on a lot of silly things. I don't blame a show for its effects, but they're just bad. Like it became almost comical, which was unfortunate. So I agree with you. I put it on D. Batwoman for me rides the same sort of lines as Arrow. I liked seasons 2 and 3 more, it being hampered by some irony with Supergirl where it's like they couldn't really do Batman, so we're going to kind of go around it but do our own side story. I liked the Ryan Wilder character, but I mean the Batwing was comically bad. Like his helmet, it looked like a Funko Pop, and some of that just felt
I
kind
like
of
that. That was nice. I wish he had wings though, to be Bat
yep,
Wing. It was more like
yeah.
Bat Jet.
Yeah, and it gets completely cut out from under it for getting canceled. So I'm gonna put Batwoman on C. I think it because of its potential, but we never got to see the conclusion. DC Legends of Tomorrow, I'm putting in B because that show just sort of wound up being like Doctor Who, Rick and Morty had a baby on the CW. Like we have a giant stuffed animal at times and we're doing kind of whatever. And it just being whatever I found entertaining. And it had a place for Matt Ryan, who was a good Constantine or Constantine, depending on where you are on the earth or which version you're watching. So I enjoy that. And now with Superman and Lois, I've said it at the big when we were kind of wrapping up discussion on this show in season 4 as a whole. It redefined Superman, particularly in a world where we have a lot of conversations about who the best is. My opinion now, it's Tyler Hoechlin. I'm putting Superman and Lois on S. So I think we have some similarities, some dissimilarities, but
Yeah.
the consistency with this universe at its best is what makes it great. I don't think I really have anything else to talk about. But Andy, thank you so much for joining me for this
Thank you.
special Superman and Lois Arrowverse episode.
I loved it. I love that. I'm very sentimental. I'm very, it's gonna be hard to not have this fire to look forward to anymore. I'm glad to be done with the CW. I'm absolutely happy to be like, like I literally like unfollowed them in real life now. Like I'm done with the CW, and I'm excited for this new era of DC. Like I'm still gonna need to go through therapy with this, because again, I never wanna see Lois Lane die, like, that's where I'm like, I understand that cancer, and I'm blessed that I've never had to deal with cancer, directly or in my near family, but for me, I always felt it was a little cruel that literally a week ago, she was like, "My cancer treatments are done, my cancer is essentially gone," and then we find out that she did get it back, and she died from it, like, I don't think that the finale should have ended with them dying. I think that we could that like you it's kinda like what How I Met Your Mother, like, you there's a point where you can edit that episode and be like, "Here's a stopping point." And you could do it with Sumo and Lois too, like, when they're sitting on the porch, that should have been the final shot, and that's
Sure.
it. I don't like, I because I've seen Clark die so many times now, and, like, listen, like, as a Tyler Hoechlin fan, and, like, he is absolutely one of my favorite Supermen of all time. Tom Welling is my Superman, and I'll fight Kyle to the end of the day that, you don't need a suit to be Superman. He was Superman from the day he was born. But what I would say is that what I didn't need was to see Lois Lane, the mother of journalism. The reason I do what I do for profession, I didn't need to see her die, and that was if I ever see Bitty Tulloch in real life, I won't be able to look at her because I'm like, "You're Lois, like, you died, like, it's like losing a mother, like, this was too much for me." And, yeah, so I think that's why I'm like so I've someone asked me, like, the other day, like, what rating would I give it? I said, like, I would probably give this finale a 7.5, like, great action, great conclusion, but the minus 2.5 is that we didn't need we didn't need the death of Clark and Lois. I think that it was 'cause, again, I get that the show is very like you were saying, This Is Us. I think very much about Friday Night Lights, when I think of this show.
Sure. That's
Um,
fair.
um, so I think for me, I kind of wish that we could have ended on something more hopeful. Again, like because my prediction was that Clark is gonna become human and he grows old with Lois, and the boys become the Superman of the world. And like that's kind of, you know, I think that would have been more a realistic ending for me, and again, I think this was just too heartbreaking. Again, I get it, they were tempted with the idea, "Oh, let's do something we've never done before," but, yeah, it was just the death of the 2 of them were just too much for me, especially with Lois, and that's kinda why, like, I don't know if I'm gonna necessarily revisit this finale anytime soon. If I have to rewatch it anytime soon, I probably will just skip the death scene because I don't know, I mean, I was left traumatized by it, like, I'm not even trying to be funny about it, I was like, this just hurt too much because it Lois, again, I dare anyone to disagree with me about she is the mother and face of journalism as we know it, she's why we fight for truth and justice, and a better tomorrow, there and I'm so happy they said that, because I was like, when they started saying truth and justice, I'm like, "Don't say America, don't say America, don't say America, don't say America, please don't say America," and then Tyler says, "A better tomorrow." I'm like, "Yes!" Because all those, effing nutters out there that got so pissed when they changed it in the comics, they lost, we won. So, um, but yeah, again, it's what an amazing journey of being able to start the CW era with a Superman show, and we're ending it with a Superman show. Like, we're never gonna have that again. Like, listen, and I'm excited for James because DC Universe, it's beginning this week, but we grew up with this. You literally you met your wife during these 12 years, 13 years. I was literally 19 when Arrow started. It's like we've grown up with it. So it's again, this will always be, for all the all the cheeky moments, the bad VFX or the horrible CW wigs that we've had to endure. There was kids. There were a lot of bad wigs on these shows, and that's all I'm going to say about that. We will have so much to look back on with so much love and excitement. Like the crossover events. I still rewatch moments from Crisis on Infinite Earths just to see Tom Welling with Candice Patton and Fitzy Tolik and Tyler Hoechlin and Tyler going like, "Are you Clark Kent?" I'm like, "Bro, is he Clark Kent? You don't know anything." So
Yeah, it's the bookend could not have been planned any better, so I'm so grateful that we had it. Andy, thank you so much for joining me
thank
on
you
this
for having
special
me.
bonus episode of the podcast. Next week's episode, you would have heard it already if you listen to Mondays, but if you didn't listen to Monday's episode, I reviewed Moana with my 6-year-old daughter, so it's as chaotic as you would expect.
Oh, that's so
So
sweet.
we did that together. So next week's episode will be my reactions to Skeleton Crew and Creature Commandos. You can look forward to that. There is no question of the week in this episode because it's a midweek episode. So you can look forward to my responding to your answers to the question of the week next week. To communicate with the podcast, you can email filmrealistpod@gmail.com. I'm on all the social medias as Film Realist or as myself. Some of them are private. You'll find out which ones. And if you did love the show and you haven't yet, please consider giving it a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. I'm trying to get that movie critic accreditation, which would be amazing because it would allow for a new phase of the Film Realist podcast. Otherwise, that's okay. My name is Kyle Naranya, and I will see you next time.